A photograph taken in 1999 tells you everything you need to know about Marco Pierre White. He is sitting in the kitchen of his restaurant, the one that had just become the first ever to hold 3 Michelin stars under a British chef, the one that the entire food world had spent years talking about, the one that had made him the most famous cook on the planet. He is 37 years old. He looks exhausted in a way that sleep cannot fix. And he has just announced that he is giving the stars back, retiring from professional cooking and walking away from the thing he had spent 20 years destroying himself to build. Not losing them, not having them taken away, giving them back voluntarily to the organisation that had defined his entire career. Because he had decided, with the same absolute certainty that had driven every other decision in his life, that he was done. The Michelin Guide did not know what to do with this. Nobody did. Chefs did not retire at 37. Chefs did not give back 3 stars. Chefs did not walk away from the summit of their industry at the precise moment they had reached it. It made no sense by any conventional measure of ambition or success, unless you understood what getting there had actually cost him, and what he had done to the people around him on the way up. To understand Marco Pierre White, you have to understand the world he was born into, because it explains almost everything about the man he became. He was born in Leeds in 1961, the third of 4 sons of a chef father and an Italian mother. His mother died when he was 6. He has spoken about that loss in almost every significant interview he has ever given, not with self-pity, but with a directness that suggests it is the organising fact of his entire personality, the wound around which everything else arranged itself. He left school at 16 with no qualifications and went to work in hotel kitchens in Harrogate, then moved to London with £7.36 in his pocket and presented himself at the back door of Le Gavroche, the most celebrated French restaurant in Britain, run by Albert Roux. Roux took him on. Marco learned. He went to the Box Tree in Ilkley, then to the Waterside Inn under Michel Roux, and then to Raymond Blanc at Le Manoir aux Quatre Saisons. He spent a few years working under 3 of the most demanding chefs in Britain, absorbing technique, building obsession, and developing a personality that was simultaneously magnetic and genuinely frightening. The stories from those kitchens are not comfortable reading. White, as a young cook, was not someone you wanted to displease. The intensity that would later make him famous, the absolute refusal to accept anything less than perfection, the volcanic rage when standards fell, and the physical and psychological pressure he placed on everyone around him was present from the beginning. It was not a performance. It was just how he was. He opened his first restaurant, Harvey's in Wandsworth, in 1987 with almost no money, borrowed equipment, and a level of culinary ambition that the location, a fairly ordinary stretch of South London High Street, did nothing to signal. Within 2 years it had 2 Michelin stars. Within 4 years it had 3 Michelin stars. Marco Pierre White was the youngest chef in history to hold 3 Michelin stars, and the first British chef to do so. He had also, by most accounts of the people who worked for him, made Harvey's into one of the most terrifying kitchens in Britain. Here is the part that the television programmes and the hagiographic profiles tend to smooth over. Because Marco Pierre White's ascent to the top of British cooking was not just a story of genius and dedication. It was a story of what happens when someone with genuine talent and zero tolerance for imperfection is given authority over other human beings, and no external check on how he uses it. The stories from Harvey's are numerous and well documented. Staff were reduced to tears, not occasionally, but routinely. Customers were thrown out of the restaurant for infractions that ranged from using a mobile phone to simply being people White had decided he did not want in his dining room. It was a culture of fear that produced extraordinary food and extraordinary casualties in equal measure. Gordon Ramsay worked for White. He has described the experience as transformative and terrifying, in roughly equal measure. Ramsay said White made him cry, that he was frightened of him, and that working in that kitchen was unlike anything he had experienced before or since. Ramsay went on to build his own empire partly in the image of what he had seen at Harvey's: the intensity, the standards, the refusal to compromise, and partly as a reaction against it. Heston Blumenthal never worked for White, but has cited him as a foundational influence. The entire generation of British chefs who transformed the country's culinary reputation in the 1990s and the 2000s were shaped, directly or indirectly, by what White built at Harvey's and then at his subsequent restaurants. He was not just a great chef, he was the source code for a generation, which makes what he did in 1999 even stranger, and even more significant. The decision to retire was not impulsive. White had been saying for years that he cooked for the Michelin guide rather than for himself, that the pressure of maintaining 3 stars had turned cooking from a passion into an obligation, from an act of creation into an act of compliance. He resented the inspectors. He resented the criteria. He resented the idea that anonymous strangers could arrive at his restaurant and sit in judgment of work that he had poured his entire being into. The specific quote he gave at the time has been repeated so often it has become almost a cliché, but it remains the most precise summary of his position. He said that Michelin had given him his 3 stars and he was giving them back because he had realised he was cooking for the inspectors and not for himself, and that was not why he had become a chef. He was 37. He had 3 stars. He had more money than he had ever imagined having when he was a teenager washing dishes in Leeds. He had achieved everything the industry considered worth achieving, and he was miserable. So he stopped. Here is what happened next, and it is the part of the Marco Pierre White story that nobody quite knows how to categorise, because retirement for White turned out to mean something very specific. It did not mean leaving the food industry. It meant leaving the part of the food industry that required him to be the person he had been at Harvey's. He became a restaurateur rather than a chef. He lent his name to restaurants that he did not cook in himself. These establishments traded on the Marco Pierre White brand while being operated by other chefs. He appeared in advertisements. He became a television personality, most famously as a judge on Hell's Kitchen UK, where the intensity that had terrorised a generation of professional chefs was translated into entertainment for a prime-time audience. He partnered with North Stock Cubes. This is the detail that most people who revere the pre-retirement Marco find hardest to reconcile. The man who had been described as the first celebrity chef, the man whose standards had reduced Gordon Ramsay to tears, was now appearing in advertisements earnestly endorsing a stock cube that costs 79 pence and is available in every supermarket in Britain. White's defence of this decision is characteristically direct. He says he uses stock cubes. He says there is no shame in convenience. He says the snobbery that surrounds professional cooking is part of what he rejected when he retired. Whether you find this persuasive depends largely on whether you think the Marco Pierre White, who cooked at Harvey's, and the Marco Pierre White in the Knorr advertisement are the same person or two very different ones. The culinary empire that bears his name today is a complex and somewhat bewildering thing. There are Marco Pierre White steakhouse bar and grill restaurants in hotels across Britain and internationally. There are Marco's New York Italian restaurants. There are White's restaurants in airports. The food in these establishments ranges, by most critical accounts, from competent to unremarkable, which is precisely the point. These are not restaurants trying to win Michelin stars. They are restaurants trying to feed large numbers of people efficiently and profitably in hotels and transport hubs. The name above the door carries weight. The name still means something to people who remember what it meant in 1993 or 1995, who know the story, who understand the reference. Whether it should carry weight, whether lending a name built on uncompromising standards to restaurants that are by design not trying to meet those standards represents a coherent position or a contradiction, is the question the industry has been quietly arguing about for 20 years. White's answer, delivered with the same directness he has always used, is that he is not pretending the hotel restaurants are Harvey's. He knows they are not Harvey's. Everyone knows they are not Harvey's. Harvey's was a specific thing that existed at a specific moment because of specific circumstances that cannot be replicated. The restaurant business he runs now is a different business. Judging it by the standards of the first is a category error. This is a reasonable argument. It is also slightly convenient. What Marco Pierre White actually destroyed was not his empire, it was his peace of mind, sacrificed in the service of building the empire. And then he dismantled the empire to get that peace back. Whether that trade was worth it is a question only he can answer, and he has answered it repeatedly by saying yes. What he left behind was something more durable than any restaurant. He left behind a standard, a demonstration that British cooking could compete with the French at their own game, on their own terms, and win. He left behind a generation of chefs who had learned, directly or indirectly, from what he built and what he demanded. He left behind the proof that a working-class kid from Leeds with no formal training and no money and a grief he never quite resolved could walk into the most competitive kitchen in the world and emerge 20 years later at the very top of it. And then he walked away, which, depending on how you look at it, is either the sanest thing anyone in his position has ever done, or the most baffling waste of talent in the history of British gastronomy. Probably both. Drop it in the comments. Do you think he made the right call walking away?